Friends, today we are gathered here to celebrate Rabindranath Tagore's birthday. To observe this event, we have invited three scholars, Professor Radha Chakravarty, Dr. Reba Som, and Professor Raika, to discuss on the topic Rabindranath Tagore on nature and environment under Akademi's popular program series, literary program. The program is being chaired by Professor Lal, distinguished English scholar and the convener English Advisory Board, Sahitya Akademi. May I request you to put your hands together for the warm welcome of our speakers. I extend my welcome to all of you and the audience who have joined us online to watch this program. I may request our online audience to share the link of Akademi's YouTube channel of this program among their friends for the benefit of lovers of literature. Now may I request Dr. K. Srinivas Rao, Secretary, Sahitya Akademi, for his welcome speech.
Thank you, Devesh. Dear Professor Lal ji, eminent writer and scholar, and also the convener of Sahitya Akademi's English Advisory Board, Professor Radha Chakravarty, eminent writer and scholar, Professor Reba Som, eminent historian and writer, Professor Raika ji, eminent writer, translator and editor, and honorable friends of Sahitya Akademi. I am glad to welcome all of you for this literary forum on Rabindranath Tagore on nature and environment. Today is Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore's birth anniversary. Gurudev is one person who had the most lasting and substantial impact on 20th century Indian cultural milieu. His writing showed people newer ways of thinking, and also at a time when people were pretty much directionless, his philosophy showed the path to people to rediscover their cultural roots. Despite his Himalayan accomplishments and gigantic mind, Gurudev was a tender, loving and down-to-earth person. His care and benevolence extended beyond human societies and the condition of human beings, or was limited to animal kingdom alone, but stretched into the vast cosmos. It is this sensitivity that is reflected in his writings. It is one thing to get inspired by some natural phenomena and express them in writing, but it is entirely different thing to have sensitive nature that enable a person to beyond merely awestruck at the beauty of nature. When one is sensitive to nature, one would have the vision of sustainable living in one's core and a philosophy that would serve the preservation and protection of environment and atmosphere. Gurudev had, that is his heart, and that is what is reflected in his writings. For Gurudev, the wide open skies, spaciousness and tranquility of the nature symbolized freedom. His poems, plays, stories and paintings in which elements of nature occurred are evocative, filled with sensitivity and responsibility. Also, the pristine nature of the world around shaped the imagination and creativity in Gurudev from the young age. He wrote much later, I quote, "I still remember a day in my childhood when I was made to struggle across my lessons in a first primer, strewn with isolated words, smothered under the burden of spelling. Suddenly, I came to a rhymed sentence of combined words, which may be translated thus: it rains, the leaves tremble. At once I came to a world wherein I recovered my full meaning. My mind touched the creative realm of expression, and at that moment, I was no longer a mere student with his mind muffled by spelling lessons enclosed by a classroom." Unquote. Maybe all of us undergo this kind of impact by nature, but it is the special nature of Gurudev that made him to appreciate and learn the importance of nature and environment very early. Gurudev himself wrote about this. I quote, "The same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day runs through the world and dances in rhythmic measures. It is the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numberless blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers." Unquote. Let me skip to the last portion of my welcome address, leaving to the experts here to give examples from his poems, etc. What is that is in store for all of us from this world view of Gurudev and what we can learn? We all should be sensitive. We all should have childlike curiosity to see and learn at each and every second of our lives. That is what Gurudev did, and there can be no excuse for us not to follow him in this. Today, the world is in a precarious condition and people have zero awareness about it. Maybe for a fleeting moment, when they read the headline or hear about climate crisis, their minds step back, but that is all just a momentary soberness. When we are sensitive like Gurudev, we will develop responsible attitude towards life forms, nature, and will take action to protect and preserve our environment. Sustainable growth and development have no meaning and relevance unless we develop responsibility and pass on to the next generation's conditions suitable to live. Gurudev showed us, and so did many great minds before him, but it is us who have not learned. At least on this Tagore Jayanti, let us undertake course correction and try to emulate Gurudev's attitude towards nature and environment. We are happy to organize this literary forum on Gurudev Jayanti, and with these few words, I am glad to welcome all of you once again. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. Now may I request Professor Radha Chakravarty.
Let us speak a few, then she will invite.
Okay. Before I request the chair to conduct the session, I would like to introduce our speakers. Professor Bhavan, who is a writer and academic, retired as professor, English Department, University of Delhi, is chairing the session. She has more than 25 published books to her credit. Her publications include Tagore and the Feminine and The Law of the Threshold, Women Writers in Indian English. Co-edited with Namita Gokhale is the Goddess Trilogy, and also Betrayed by Hope, a play on the life of the Michael Madhusudan Dutt, which received the Kalinga Fiction Award. Lal's poems, Mandalas of Time, has recently been translated into Hindi as Mandal Dhwani. She is currently convener English Advisory Board of the Sahitya Akademi. Honours include the prestigious Maharani Gayatri Devi Award for Women's Excellence. Our speakers, among our speakers, Professor Radha Chakravarty is a poet, critic and translator based in Delhi. She was Professor of Comparative Literature and Translation Studies at Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Delhi. She has published more than 20 books, including The Essential Tagore, Mahasweta Devi, writer, activist, visionary, feminism and contemporary women writers, and novelist Tagore. She has translated Tagore's Gora, Chokhirwali, Boyhood Days, Farewell Song, 4 chapters, and The Land of Cards, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's Kapal Kundala, Kazi Nazrul Islam's Selected Essays, and Mahasweta Devi's Our Shanti Niketan, and In the Name of the Mother. She has edited 1 million Clouds stories by Bengali women and crossing stories from Bangladesh and India, and several anthologies of South Asian writing. Subliminal Poems is her debut volume of poetry. She contributed to Pandemic, a worldwide community poem, nominated for the Postcard Prize 2020. Our next speaker, Dr. Reba Som, is the recipient of the prestigious Tagore National Fellowship 2024. She is an author and academic. She was the founder director of the Rabindranath Tagore Center, ICCR Kolkata, from 2008 to 2013. Her publications include Gandhi, Bose, Nehru, and the Making of the Modern Indian Mind, Rabindranath Tagore, the singer and his song, Margot, Sister Nivedita of Vivekananda, and Hope, Skip and Jump. Reba Som is a trained singer of Rabindra Sangeet and Nazrul Giti. Her compact disc albums, Selected Songs of Rabindranath Tagore and Love Song of Qazi Nazrul Islam, also include her English translations of the lyrics. They are on the digital platform. Professor Raika is a professor at Indraprasth College for Women, University of Delhi. She has 19 books to her credit. She has published extensively in leading literary journals and has presented her work at international and national conferences, literary meets and literary festivals in India, Europe and the USA. She was awarded the Vatayan Antarashtriya Shiksha Samman 2023 and was invited to Duke University, USA for a short residency program. Now may I request our chair, Professor Mala Srilal, for his speech and further to conduct the program.
Good afternoon, Namaskar. It's a very important day for all of us as we celebrate Rabindranath Tagore's birth anniversary. On his birthday, he was in the habit of writing a poem to remember something special that he wished to bring to the notice of his many friends, disciples, relatives. And as we read those poems which are titled Janmodine, you in a way get a lineage of the developing interests and influences in his life. And a very strong influence was, of course, nature and environment, because he felt that unless one is continuously in touch with nature, and human beings are not separate from nature. Nature actually flows through each of us and we interact with nature in a most integrated fashion. And his music also was part of this recognition of nature. And the proof of this, as Secretary Dr. Rao was saying, that the proof of all his integration of nature into life is in what he did with Shantiniketan and with Sriniketan, to actually go out into a rural area like Bolpur with the tribal community of the Santals predominantly there, and to set up a world-class university with teachings in many languages, including Japanese and Chinese. This kind of a world view, and the motto of the university is the world in a nest, this kind of a wide vision that he brought to nature, and in return expected the students will learn sitting under the tree, the Chatintola. This idea of being not separated by walls from nature, but being one with it, that was very, very important. I will not go into more details at this point because we have an excellent panel of speakers, Tagoreans, those who have read and worked on his writings and his music for a very long time. Begin by requesting Professor Radha Chakravarty to give us her views.
Press this one.
Thank you. It is always a pleasure to speak here at Sahitya Akademi, where so many languages and literatures flow together in a kind of confluence. And Tagore is the kind of meeting space also for the confluence of many ideas and many cultural streams. Today we are going to talk about Rabindranath Tagore and his thoughts on nature and environment. We've already heard the wonderful introduction by Professor Malashri Lal. And I will add to that some of my own thoughts. Tagore's writings on nature and environment are inspired, passionate, and prophetic, affirming the dynamic connections between human life, environment, and the universe. In Gitanjali, he writes, and here I'm quoting a little bit of what we already heard in the welcome speech, where he talks of the same stream of life that runs through my veins night and day, runs through the world, dances in rhythmic measures and so on, and how the same life that shoots in joy through the dust of the earth in numberless blades of grass and breaks into tumultuous waves of leaves and flowers. So this sense of oneness with the universe, with the world of nature, is what comes through in Gitanjali, which is perhaps still his best-known work across the world. And this all-encompassing vision embraces even the humblest forms of existence as part of a larger cosmic design. In fact, I have recently translated a poem which is about insects. He's written a poem about insects, and he says, every day I pass by and there's a spider weaving a web. Why don't I look at it? Every day I take the same path, and there are these ants walking in a line, building their homes and going about their work. Why don't I notice them? And he muses, do they have a language? Do they have music? I wonder what goes on in their lives and their consciousness. And it's such an important poem even now, even today. So it was a discovery for me to read and translate this poem, and I thought I would share this thought with you. So there is this all-encompassing vision where nothing is too small or too humble to count as something that matters in the universe. Focusing on the false division between the human and the non-human, Tagore's writings express a worldview privileging relationality, responsibility, and connectivity, embracing the non-human, but without giving up the idea of human subjectivity and agency. There is always a feeling in his writings that there is something for us to do, that there's something for us to feel, to know, and to act upon. His discomfort with the anthropocentric view is evident in his story Bolai, about a young orphan's profound sense of identification with the plant world, especially an unwanted sapling that springs up in his uncle's manicured lawn, only to be uprooted and cast aside. Like Bolai, Tagore too feels an instinctive, primordial sense of affinity with nature. In a letter to Indira Devi, he writes, and I'm quoting from his letter, "This earth, like someone I have loved long through many births, remains ever new to me. The two of us share a very deep and extensive acquaintance. I can well remember that many ages ago, when the youthful earth had freshly emerged from her immersion in the sea to offer homage to the young sun of that era, I had blossomed into foliage as a tree in the new soil of this earth, in a primal life urge that came from who knows where." So he feels that he has been through many births, and that in his very first birth in a newborn planet, he was born as a tree. Two places that inspired Tagore's vision of nature were Shilaidaho in East Bengal, now Bangladesh, where as a young man he spent months on a boat on the river Padma, minding the family estates, and the Bolpur area, where his father, Maharshi Rabindranath, had created a forest retreat named Shantiniketan, where Rabindranath later established his dream university, Vishwabharati. In poem, song, and painting, Tagore expresses his ecological consciousness. He celebrates the seasons, and their connections with the rhythms of human life. In his works, nature acquires spiritual overtones, forming an intrinsic part of his faith. The poem Vrikshabandhana, or Hymn to the Tree, celebrates the divinity of the tree. For sensitizing the mind to the inseparable relationship between humans and the environment, Tagore believed that education, like literature, can play a vital role. He located Vishwabharati in the lap of nature, at the heart of the Birbhum forests, beginning with a school modeled on the ancient Indian Tapovan. The curriculum at Shantiniketan taught responsibility for preservation of the environment to counter what Tagore calls the ugly greed of commercialism in the modern age with its mailed fist of earth hunger. The annual festivals of Halakarshan or ploughing and Vriksharopan or tree planting are part of this vision. Tagore is convinced, though, that when the ecological balance is disrupted by humans in pursuit of their own self-interest, disaster can ensue. Some of his writings project an endangered earth threatened by the human greed for power. In Divinity of the Forest, he says, man receives the bounty of nature greedily, but not content with what he has received so easily, he sets out to ravage nature mercilessly. That is why mankind now seems bent on turning earth into a desert. Unquote. Tagore feels that imperialism, materialism, and capitalism were driving humans to act as enemies of the environment. In the essay Shakuntala, he highlights civilizational differences between East and West, contrasting Shakespeare's play, The Tempest, which represents the human will to tame and conquer nature, with Kalidas's Shakuntala, representing the heroine's life in harmony with nature. Aware that one nation's actions can affect the environmental safety of other nations, Tagore, with great prescience, warns Asian countries like India and Japan against aping Western imperialist practices that might precipitate a future environmental crisis. In a letter to Rachel Rothenstein, Tagore expresses his outrage at the killing of deer and peacocks by hunters and poachers, connecting such acts with the brutality of war. And today, when we are almost on the brink of war ourselves, it's worth remembering Tagore's lines about the outbreaks of violence across the world and his distress at the reality of war. And in Bengali, the lines are Hingshai Unmakta Prithivi. I am reading Tagore's own translation, just the first few lines. The world today is wild with the delirium of hatred. The conflicts are cruel and unceasing in anguish. Let love's lotus with its inexhaustible treasure of honey open its petals in thy light. It's very interesting that as an alternative to the brutality of war and violence and destruction, he draws from nature the beautiful image of a lotus opening its petals. And that is his image for love, which is his idea of the alternative to violence. In another lecture at the University of Dhaka, the lecture is called The Rule of the Giant. He bemoans the defilement of the river Ganga due to the effects of mercantile capitalism. The play Muktadhara anticipates current debates about the environmental impact of building big dams. Rakta Korobi, translated as Red Oleanders, uses the trope of mining to demonstrate the organized destruction of the environment by powerful syndicated forces. Clearly, Tagore is anxious about the long-term consequences of man's destruction of the environment. But he also signals the possibility of healing the breach between human and natural worlds through an ethics of love, care, and harmonious coexistence. He says about Red Oleanders, yet the law of love holds good in the world of nature as well as in the world of men. It is through love for the soil and for the cherishing of it, that the soil responds to our touch. At that touch, our own hurt is healed. Today, facing a war-torn world on the brink of ecological disaster, perhaps it is time to revisit Tagore's ideas for our own times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Radha, for that very enlightening talk and connecting Tagore's ideas with our times. And this goes to remind us how contemporary he is and how relevant he continues to be. So I opened up my book to Karna Kunti Sangvad, the discussion between Karna and Kunti, because that also happens on the eve of the war. And when I was reading it in preparation for today and Tagore, it occurred to me how he changes a lot that is in the original Mahabharata to make it set in the light of the evening sun, and how the relationship of the biological mother and the son, and of course the son doesn't know this, is woven into the tapestry of the change of the day into the evening. So just to illustrate that, I'm going to read a few lines from Karna Kunti Sangvad, and these are by Ketuki Kushari Dyson. This is Karna. Respected lady, the light of your lowered eyes melts my heart as the sun's rays melt mountain snows. Your voice pierces my ears as a voice from a previous birth and stirs strange pain. Tell me then, by what mystery's chain is my birth linked to you, unknown woman? And now Kunti responds, oh, be patient, child, for a moment. Let the sun god first slide to his rest, and let evening's darkness thicken around us. Now let me tell you, warrior, I am Kunti. So, in some ways, the world and the tussle of peace and violence is perennial. And on Tagore's birth anniversary, it is a reminder for all of us to move towards peace, but to remember that violence is also a part of the human construct. I'll move on next to Reba Som and request her to present her views.
Thank you for this opportunity of presenting this paper on a very special day, Rabindra Jayanti, and Radha has spoken so beautifully about the environment of Shantiniketan, which kind of nurtured the soul of Tagore in proximity with nature. I would like to speak on the significance of the environment in the songs of Tagore. Although born in a family of 14 siblings, Tagore spent a lot of time alone, though not lonely. And the turning point in Tagore's life, of course, came in 1890 when he was asked by his father, Rabindranath Tagore, to look after their ancestral estates in Shilaidaho in East Bengal, on the banks of the majestic river Padma, which we've just heard. The environment grew on him while the rural society fascinated him. Tagore came to realize that he was part of a universal oneness. He had the realization of a Jivan Devta, the god that dwelt within him, which he was later to elaborate as the religion of man. The closeness with the environment led to his resolve to open a school in rural settings along the lines of the old forest ashrams celebrated by Kalidasa. And this, as we've heard, was the ideal behind Tagore's ashram school in Shantiniketan and later his Vishwabharati University. This was actually at a distance of 100 miles from Calcutta. Shantiniketan was the spot selected by Maharishi Rabindranath several years ago. Devoid of vegetation, Rabindranath created a school around the only green life that he found there, which was a cluster of tall sal trees and a shady mango grove. In the open space all around, he came to appreciate the dramatic change of seasons. And the majority of Tagore's Gitanjali songs were written here, which he translated into English later, and which went on to win him the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913. Tagore's songs on nature or Prakriti, numbering 283, form a distinct genre in his musical oeuvre. In these songs, Tagore sought to capture the self-contained balance that he discovered in nature, and one of the finest expressions of being connected with cosmic creation is his song Akash Para Surya Tara. The sun and star-studded skies, a world throbbing with life, in the midst of which have I found my place, in wonder thus does my song arise. On blades of grass have my feet stepped along the forest path. My mind has started at the heady fragrance of flowers. The gifts of your joy are scattered all around. In wonder thus does my song arise. I have poured out my life unto the bosom of the earth. I have searched for the unknown in the midst of the known. In wonder thus does my song arise. In arid inland Shantiniketan, with its dusty red roads, summer came with its sizzling heat. Tagore captured the mood of a long summer day thus in his song Prokhorotaponotape. In the intense heat of the sun, the earth shivers in deep thirst, the winds rage. I come to a temple and cry at the end of a long journey, open, open, open the doors. Varsha, or the rains, were perhaps the most favorite season of the poet. It drew a veil of rain over the mind and created a canopy of clouds so that the mind could not wander. The monsoons were celebrated in Shantiniketan with Varsha Mangal, a festival of dance and songs composed specially in celebration of the rains. Sharad was the season of golden sunshine, blue skies, swaying bulrushes in the fields, heaps of harsingar on green dewy patches and white floating clouds. The very short season of Sharad was celebrated by students in Shantiniketan as Sharadotsav. The season of Hemant came with star-spangled skies and dewy nights. With the imagery of Diwali, or the festival of lights in his mind, Tagore composed his celebrated song, Himero Rate Oi Gogone. Hemant was described as a season of empty flower gardens where singing birds had become silent and bulrushes poured their foliage into the river. But carrying the message of hope and revival, the myriad stars in the night sky seemed to inspire Earth's children to light their own lamps of Dipalika, conquering the darkness with life-sustaining illumination. Winter brought with it golden sunshine and the promise of a rich harvest. Tagore wrote, "The season of Posh hails you. Come hither, come hither. A platter is filled with ripe harvest. Come, let us celebrate." To complete the cycle of seasons in the collection of Tagore's nature songs was Ritu Raj Basant, or spring, the king of seasons. Basant to Tagore was like a free wandering spirit. It was flirtatious and frivolous, but it also came as the harbinger of hope and inspiration. The magic of spring was beautifully captured by Tagore in a song, Ek Tuku Chua Lage, the intoxicating red of the palash, mixed with a dash of champa's heady fragrance. I weave with music into a net of color and fervor. Spring was celebrated in Shantiniketan with abandon on the day of the Festival of Colors. Holi, or Basantutsav, which would end on a full moon night with a feast of song and dance celebrating the magic of spring. Tagore's Anushtanik, or occasion-specific songs, in his song anthology Gito Bitan were meant to celebrate quotidian life. I think you have touched on that too. The poet introduced Bali dancing in a colorful festival in 1928 to commemorate tree planting of Vriksha Ropan as part of an environmental awareness campaign. In the same year, he introduced another festival, Halakarshan, to celebrate the ploughing of agricultural fields and the reaping of harvests. Many Santal tribals who lived around the village were invited to be part of these celebrations. At Sriniketan, adjacent to Shantiniketan, where Tagore had set up a center for agricultural studies, a festival celebrating handicraft was annually held on Vishwakarma Puja, a religious festival dedicated to the patron deity of artisans and workers. Tagore sought to instill in his students a respect for the environment as he observed, and this Radha brings out beautifully, with increasing disillusionment, how modern civilization was choking the beauty of the environment with brick and mortar and the din of advertisements. Uncannily prophetic today, Tagore predicted, and I quote here, "Before long, the sky over the human world, the east and the west, will be smudged with factory smoke, and the green of the living nature will be licked grey by the demon of the utilitarian spirit." In their school anthem, Amader Shantiniketan, students sang of their communion with nature, nurtured by groves and protected by an embracing sky. I now end with a song of Tagore, which is from his Gitanjali collection. In fact, the first song of Gitanjali, which is, of course, translated by him into English, but the original was, and with the lyrics, were made by him in Shantiniketan, which is a song of gratitude, of reminding ourselves that we are constantly drained of life by life's tragedies and disappointments, only to be filled again with fresh love and fresh energy by divinity, which means that we are ultimately endless, perennial, limitless, or shesh. So this is the song which I will request. I have a song video of this.
इधर का थोड़ा लाइट बंद कर देना, लाइट बंद कर।
This gentleman's head is going to...
Avdesh,
Can you move a bit because the violin...
Thank you, Reba, for your paper and also for the beautiful singing that has been turned into a platform that everybody here can access her on Spotify and many other sources if you wish to hear more of Reba's Rabindra Sangeet. Amare tumi oshish korecho, thou has made me endless. What a beautiful message to carry away from this session. When one goes back to the younger days of Rabindranath Tagore, the sensitivity to nature and environment is often quite playfully expressed. And I'm just going to relate this small incident of his sort of good, friendly banter that he used to have with his sister-in-law, Kadumburi Devi. And in Jorashako, where they lived, one of the balconies near Kadumburi Devi's room had been turned into a kind of a terrace garden with lots of flowers, and she was very fond of beautification, etc. She had kept caged birds, and Rabindranath objected to that. And he said, you should never keep birds in a cage. And he was scolded for it. He said, what do you know? This is what we want to do. And then when two squirrels arrived and they were caged, young Rabindranath just let the cage off and let the squirrels go. Of course, he got a scolding for it. But it's a lovely illustration of how what he writes in his poetry and his music and other forms of his composition is also reflected in his instinctive behavior even as a young person.
He has a poem also.
Yes, he does. So that integration of life, that you live what you believe, is so evident when we talk about Gurudev. So I'll now turn to Raika Sethi and request her for her views.
नमस्कार, बहुत बहुत आभार सबसे पहले साहित्य अकादमी का। मैं जिनके साथ मंच साझा कर रही हूँ, प्रोफेसर माला श्रीलाल, रेबा दी और प्रोफेसर राधा चक्रवर्ती, वे सब टैगोर के बहुत बड़े बड़े स्कॉलर्स हैं। मैं अपने आप को अभी भी उनका एक विद्यार्थी ही पाती हूँ, जबकि विद्यार्थी जीवन में मेरी गंभीरता से पढ़ने लिखने की शुरुआत टैगोर के साहित्य से ही हुई और उस समय एक जुनून चढ़ा कि उनकी सभी कहानियाँ, कविताएं और उपन्यास पढ़ूं। लेकिन जब बड़े हुए तब समझ में आया कि जिसे हम सोचते थे कि हमने सब कुछ पढ़ लिया, हमने तो उसका अंश भर ही पढ़ा, क्योंकि 2000 गीत, 1000 कविताएं, 3000 के करीब पेंटिंग्स हैं उनकी। तो इतना विपुल साहित्य, इतना निबंध, कहानियां, उपन्यास, न जाने क्या क्या। और जो ढूंढ कर मिलता है, कुछ वर्ष पहले मुझे साहित्य अकादमी में टैगोर और राष्ट्रवाद पर एक पर्चा पढ़ने का मौका मिला था। तब मैंने उसके लिए रिसर्च किया तो मुझे लगा कि हम तो केवल घरे बहरे या गोरा में राष्ट्रवाद को देख रहे थे, लेकिन कितने और आयाम उनके खुलते हैं। ऐसे ही जब प्रकृति और पर्यावरण पर बात हुई तो लगा कि हाँ, गीतांजलि के माध्यम से, कुछ गीतों के माध्यम से, लेकिन फिर जब सोचना शुरू किया तो कई ऐसी बातें सामने आई जो पहले नहीं सोची थी। सबसे पहले मेरा ध्यान गया राष्ट्रगान पर। राष्ट्रगान में अगर हम देखें, पंजाब, सिंध, गुजरात, मराठा, द्राविड़, उत्कल, बंग, यानी एक भूखंड की बात है। लेकिन उसके साथ क्या आता है ना, देश बनता है केवल जमीन के टुकड़ों से, न केवल जन से। विंध्य, हिमाचल, यमुना, गंगा, उच्छल जलधि तरंग, जब तक कि वो नदियां, वो सागर, वो हवाएं मनुष्य का और उस जमीन का साथ नहीं देती, तब तक देश नहीं बनता। ऐसी परिपूर्ण संकल्पना रविंद्रनाथ ठाकुर के साहित्य से हमें मिलती है। इसको पढ़ते हुए, इसको सोचते हुए मुझे वैदिक काल के मंत्रों की भी याद आई। जब हम सूर्य के प्रति समर्पण करते हैं, मारुत के प्रति समर्पण करते हैं, अग्नि के प्रति समर्पण करते हैं, उसमें भी एक जीवन दृष्टि है। ये केवल एक भयभीत मन की उपासनाएं या प्रार्थनाएं नहीं है। ऐसा नहीं कि उनकी ताकत से डरकर कोई मनुष्य उन्हें मनाने निकला है, बल्कि मैं मानती हूँ कि भारतीय सभ्यता के विकास में जो एक समावेशी दृष्टि जिसे हम कहते हैं, वो हमें वहीं से मिलती है। राधा जी ने अभी बात की थी कि प्रकृति के प्रति देखने की दो दृष्टिकोण होते हैं, और बराबर इस पर विचार किया है रविन्द्रनाथ ठाकुर ने कि एक पश्चिम की दृष्टि है जो विज्ञानवादी दृष्टि है और नियंत्रण करना चाहती है। मुक्त धारा नाटक की भी बात हुई और रक्तकर्मी नाटक की भी बात हुई, जिनमें सबसे बड़ी समस्या ही ये है कि क्या हम प्रकृति पर नियंत्रण करके एक नई सभ्यता का विकास कर सकते हैं। और आज से 100 बरस पहले टैगोर इस पर लिख रहे हैं कि नियंत्रण नहीं, बल्कि भारतीय जीवन दृष्टि क्या है, समर्पण की। और 20 वर्ष की उम्र में जो कविता उन्होंने लिखी थी, जिसे आज भी याद किया जाता है, निर्झर का स्वप्न भंग, मैं उसकी 4 पंक्तियां यहाँ पढ़ना चाहूंगी। आज इस प्रभात काल में सूर्य की किरणें प्राणों के भीतर कैसे प्रवेश कर रही, गुहा के अंधकार में प्रभात पक्षी का गान कैसे समा गया, न जाने इतने दिनों बाद प्राण क्यों कर जाग उठे, प्राण जाग उठे हैं, अरे पानी उछल कर उमड़ पड़ा है, अरे प्राणों की वेदना, प्राणों के आवेग को रोक रखना संभव नहीं है। तो टैगोर के यहाँ, रविन्द्रनाथ ठाकुर के यहाँ जो देह है, जो बाह्य तत्व है, उसके भीतर का प्राण तत्व सबसे महत्वपूर्ण है। भारतीय दृष्टि विराट ब्रह्मांड के सम्मुख सदा झुकती है, स्वयं को उसका अंश मानती है, समर्पण और संभाव से प्रकृति का अंश हो जाती है। और रविन्द्रनाथ ठाकुर के यहाँ यही समर्पण, यही संभाव उनकी समस्त रचनाशीलता को प्रेरित करता है। इसीलिए हम उन्हें गुरुदेव कहते हैं। गुरुदेव चाहे किसी भी कारण आया हो, लेकिन जो दिशा दिखाता है वही गुरु है। और रविन्द्रनाथ ठाकुर ने लगातार एक विश्व दृष्टि बनाने की कोशिश की है, जिसमें भारतीय परंपरा के तत्व पूर्णता अनुस्यूत थे, लेकिन एक ऐसा मन और एक ऐसी वैचारिकता भी थी कि जो खोल कर देख सके, बड़ा होकर देख सके, मन बड़ा करके देख सके। तो इसीलिए वहाँ कुछ भी छोटी छोटी दीवारों में बटा हुआ नहीं है। उनकी प्रसिद्ध कविता है भारत तीर्थ। उसमें भी समस्त संस्कृतियों के संगम से भारत एक तीर्थ बनता है, उसका जिक्र उन्होंने किया। इसीलिए जब हम उनके साहित्य की बात करते हैं तो जिस मानवीयता या मानव धर्म की वो बात कर रहे हैं, उसमें एक समन्वय का संगीत प्राण शब्द की तरह सुनाई पड़ता है। टैगोर कहते हैं जीवन में जो माधुर्य है वो प्रकृति के सौंदर्य के स्निग्ध रूपों से ही आता है। और उनके साहित्य में प्रकृति को मैं दो रूपों में देखती हूँ। एक जहाँ प्रकृति ही आलंबन है, यानी कविता का विषय ही प्रकृति है। अभी बहुत से उदाहरण हैं, मुझे नहीं पता समय रहेगा या नहीं, लेकिन टैगोर ने प्रात, संध्या, रात्रि, नदी, सागर, विहग, आकाश, अनेक विषयों पर कविताएं लिखी। और उन बिंबों में खास तौर पे जो रंग उभरते हैं, प्रात का आलोक, पीला, नारंगी, लाल, हरितिमा का हरा, रात्रि का नीला, गोधूली वेला का अपना ही रंग है। और मेरे लिए ये बहुत रोचक था। मेरे पास एक बहुत खूबसूरत किताब है, मैं चाहती थी कि उसकी बहुत से अंश आपको दिखाती, पर ऐसा संभव नहीं हो पाया। रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर की पेंटिंग्स की किताब है और उसमें कई लैंडस्केप्स हैं और उन लैंडस्केप्स में ज़्यादातर गहरे रंग हैं, बैकग्राउंड गहरा है और उसके बीच से एक उजास की तरह एक सफ़ेद सा फूल दिखाई पड़ता है। नीले और ब्राउन रंग का, भूरे रंग का प्रयोग काफ़ी किया गया। और जहाँ हरे पेड़ हैं उनके बीच में पूरा आलोकित होता हुआ नारंगी सा रंग हमें दिखाई पड़ता है। रंगों का ऐसा अद्भुत संयोजन, तो यानी केवल कविताएं, कहानियां ही नहीं, बल्कि अगर उनके संगीत पे जैसे रेबा दी कह रही थी, या पेंटिंग्स की तरफ जाएं तो भी हमें प्रकृति का एक पूरा भरा पूरा संसार मिलता है। दूसरा बड़ा हिस्सा जो है उस साहित्य का है जहाँ प्रकृति उनके पात्रों की मनस्थिति का अंग बनके उनके भावनाओं का चिरंतन साथी हो जाती है। और मुझे खास तौर पे और भी उदाहरण है, लेकिन नष्ट नीड़ में चारुलता जगह जगह छोटी छोटी अधूरी कविताएं लिखकर छोड़ देती है और वो कविताएं याद आती हैं। और सत्यजीत रे ने जब फिल्म बनाई उस पर, तो अगर आप उन कैमरा एंगल्स को भी याद करें तो जब दृश्य खुलता है तो एक बड़ा सा दृश्य होता है, पूरा भरा पूरा बगीचा, और फिर धीरे धीरे छोटी सी चारुलता पर कैमरा फोकस करता है। तो ये जो बिंब है ये कहीं ना कहीं टैगोर के साहित्य से ही आता है। राधा दी ने जिक्र किया था बोलाई कहानी का, उसका एक छोटा सा अंश मैं आपके लिए पढ़ना चाहूंगी हिंदी अनुवाद में। बोलाई जो एक बच्चा है और जिसके लिए जो कहानी कह रहा है, जो प्रोटैगनिस्ट है उसमें, वो कहता है कि वो मेरा भतीजा है और उसका क्या संबंध बनता है। और वो जैसे नहीं चाहता कि एक पेड़ काटा जाए, और उसके लिए मतलब बोलाई के बारे में जो लेखक कह रहा है, मेरे भतीजे बोलाई में जो मेरे भाई का बेटा है, जाने कैसे पेड़ और पौधों की मूल ध्वनियां सबसे अधिक गूंजती थी। बचपन से ही उसमें चुपचाप खड़े होकर टकटकी लगाए देखने की आदत थी और लड़कों की तरह इधर उधर घूमना फिरना उसे रास नहीं आता। जब पूरब के आसमान में काले बादल परत दर परत जमा हो जाते तो ऐसा लगता जैसे उसके भीतर सावन के जंगलों की भीनी भीनी गंध से आत्मा भर जाती थी। जब बारिश झमाझम बरसती तो उसका पूरा शरीर जैसे उस वर्षा की बात को सुनता था। जब दोपहर को धूप छत पर फैल जाती, वह नंगे बदन टहलता रहता जैसे पूरे आकाश से कुछ अपने भीतर समेट रहा हो। माघ महीने में जब आम के पेड़ बौराते तो उसकी नस नस में कोई अव्यक्त सी याद जाग उठती, एक खुशी भर जाती, उसका आंतरिक स्वभाव जैसे चारों ओर फैल जाता। आगे ये पूरा दृश्य चलता है। फिर फागुन में वो कैसा महसूस करता, फिर जब वो पहाड़ पर चढ़ता है तो कैसे, जब वो रोल डाउन करता है तो घास उसकी गर्दन पर चिपक जाती। पूरा लंबा विवरण उन्होंने दिया है। तो मैं यही सोच रही थी कि बोलाई जो है उस पूरी प्रकृति को अपने भीतर इस तरह महसूस करता है, और अगर पेड़ कटता है तो वो उसकी पीड़ा को महसूस कर सकता है। लेकिन इस कहानी की एक उपलब्धि इसकी वर्णन क्षमता भी है। जिस तरह से आख्यान कर रहे हैं, जिस तरह रविन्द्रनाथ ठाकुर इस कहानी को सुना रहे हैं कि उसका कैसे संबंध था, तो प्रकृति या पर्यावरण ही तभी संभव है जब आप उस पूरे परिवेश का हिस्सा हो जाएं। टैगोर के यहाँ प्रकृति प्रेम मानव प्रेम में बदलता है और फिर अध्यात्म में बदलता है। उसकी बेजिक्र बार बार हुआ। एक कविता है अवसन चेतना की गोधुली बेला में, उसमें वो कहते हैं, देखूं उस पुरुष को जो तुम में और मुझ में एक होकर विराजमान है। देख रहे हैं किसे? गोधुली बेला को, लेकिन उसके माध्यम से देख रहे हैं किसे? उस परम पुरुष को जो तुम में और मुझ में एक होकर विराजमान है। कबीर ने भी ऐसा ही कहा था, मुझ में राम, तुझ में राम, सब में राम समाया। तो भारतीय साहित्य में रस की बड़ी प्रतिष्ठा है। रस आनंद का स्रोत है, और लॉन्जाइनस के यहाँ उदात्त। टैगोर का समस्त साहित्य रस और उदात्त के संधि स्थल पर अवस्थित है। यही उसकी बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है। शांति निकेतन की बात सबने कर ली है। मैं बस अंत में इतना ही कहना चाहती हूँ कि प्रकृति, परिवेश और पर्यावरण रविन्द्रनाथ ठाकुर की जीवन दृष्टि का अभिन्न हिस्सा है। साहित्य और समाज को उनके अप्रतिम दाय की धरोहर है। टैगोर के लिए ये समस्याएं सभ्यता का संकट है, जिसे आप सिविलाइजेशनल क्राइसिस कहते हैं। वे उन समस्याओं को एक सर्वांगीण जीवन दृष्टि से सुलझाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। इसीलिए जो उदाहरण बीच बीच में दिए गए कि कैसे वो जो ग्रामीण जीवन है, जो सबसे अधिक हाशियाकृत है, उसकी चिंता उनको सबसे अधिक होती है। उनके अनुसार भारत की सांस्कृतिक बहुलता हमारी पारिस्थितिकी, इकोलॉजी की विविधता से ही आती है, और पुनः हम राष्ट्रगान तक लौट सकते हैं कि कैसे उसमें विंध्य, हिमाचल, यमुना, गंगा, उच्छल जलधि तरी। धन्यवाद।
Thank you very much, Rekha, for a very insightful and deep presentation of aspects of Tagore that bring in social consciousness as well as national understanding. Thank you. I think we're very fortunate in the entire scope of Indian literature that Rabindranath Tagore has been translated in almost every language of the country, and in some form or the other has reached people across the country and also abroad. During the 150th year celebrations of Tagore, we had the opportunity to work with people from Eastern Europe in very large numbers, and smaller countries, Slovenia, Czechoslovakia, so many countries, where there was an interest in Tagore. And it just goes to show that there is, as all the three speakers said, there is a humanitarian and a universal appeal. And when we approach that appeal through nature and environment, then it's a global appeal. And that is what this session has brought to us. And I think even in stories which seem to be people-centered, for instance, we often talk about Kabuliwala and Stri Potro or Wife's Letter. But if one goes deeper into those stories, there are passages and passages about nature and environment. So that interaction is always there. And today is a good day to remember that human existence and the bounty of nature goes together. If you separate, then there is danger to all of human civilization. So I thank all the speakers and Sahitya Akademi for putting this program together. Thank you, Dr. Rao. If there are one or two brief questions, we can take them.
सबसे बड़ी बात है कि जो हम ब्रह्मात्म तत्वमसि की बात की, वैदिक ज्ञान की, गुरुदेव ने जो कुछ जिस तरह से डिस्क्राइब किया है, गुरुदेव ने जो कुछ बताया, वो आज 4 घटनाओं में आप लोगों के सामने प्रस्तुत करने को होता है। सब कुछ सारी दृष्टि, अंतर्दृष्टि में वही गुरुदेव की दृष्टि से जो देखिए साफ पुस्तकों के सामने जिससे जुड़ करके और अपने आसपास के वातावरण साहित्य के साथ सब कुछ सबसे बड़ी बात है। आप लोगों को बहुत अच्छा।
Thank you. Anyone else, please? जी, please. अब माइक ऑन कर लीजिए.
Diwali, it is my credit or priority to see Tagore. As much I got inspiration to be gentleman, I think that is due to Tagore. First, I noticed or watched in his writing to love nature. Once I visited Shantiniketan, and Bengali mass had habit to visit Shantiniketan and Sriniketan aside. The previous speaker spoke about the celebration of the seasons, and Tagore there first introduced the loving of nature, love to nature activity, cooperative, taking the local people to everything. Thank you very much to speak organizing way, need to be concentrated. I am very happy, fortunate and honored to speak few words. Haphazardly I can speak many things about Tagore. In my house there is, in 1961, Vivekananda Vachanavali and Tagore Vachanavali. I turned the pages haphazardly. All the books mentioned by the honorable speakers, I have gone through previously. It is my privilege.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, we've had a very learned and attentive audience. Thank you very much for being with us on this special day.
Thank you very much, Madam, for your insightful address. Friends, on behalf of Sahitya Academy, I thank all of you and the speakers, Professor Bhavan, Mr. Radha Chakravarty, Dr. Reba Som, and Professor Raika. Now, this program ends here. Please continue your support on our future programs. Now, all of you are invited to have tea. Please join us.